We move away from the Algarve International Circuit and over to the Cathedral of Speed. Welcome to the Dutch Grand Prix weekend for World Superbikes. It's the Dutch TT Assen, and it's getting set then already for free practice number 2. Pit lane open in 2 minutes' time. Let's head down to the world feed for commentary on this session.
And for Razgatlioglu, that's important that he's got that feeling and the confidence that comes from that. We know that it's not quite what it was like last year for him on the BMW, but Toprak hasn't shied away from that. He wants to fight against Bulaga.
Yes, Nicolo Bulaga, who was a big step behind in Portimao last season, but was much closer this time around, was also dropped a lot of points here in Assen. We'll see if he can be that much closer again to Razgatlioglu and just keep the pressure on. There will be opportunities surely for Bulaga to take further race victories, as he did with 3 in Phillip Island first time out. Here's the man of the moment then, certainly after free practice 1 this morning, Alvaro Bautista. And as I said at the top of the programme this morning, Bautista has had the podium pace, and when he's finished a race, he's been on the podium. The problem for him is he's only once been able to be in the top 2, and that's when this man Toprak Razgatlioglu had his race 2 retirement in Phillip Island. So the fact that he isn't beating Toprak and Bulaga, the fact that he's dropped points through 2 retirements means Bautista really would need to go on a winning spree to even be considered in contention.
Yeah, already at this stage of the season, there's enough information to make it very clear that Bulaga is Ducati's title challenger and Bautista is a very successful number 2 rider right now, and until he's able to make that step up to take the fight to them for all 3 races in a weekend, that's the status quo at Ducati.
Nicolo Bulaga then is your current World Championship leader, courtesy of the big margin gained in Phillip Island first time out with a hat-trick of victories, 3 second places in Portimao last time out, and looked steady this morning as well, 3rd fastest. And really, from Bulaga, we saw last time out, he didn't have the pace to match Toprak through free practice, through Superpole, and then suddenly, when we got underway with the races, the 2 of them were in a direct fight and more or less matching one another's pace. So nothing to be alarmed about for Bulaga either at this stage.
Yeah, nothing at all, and I think for Bulaga, he'll certainly know that he's going to be competitive here this weekend at Assen. Last year, he had arm pump issues. This year, he seems much more settled on the bike and a lot more comfortable.
Just saw Andrea Locatelli as we build up to this free practice 2 session. Just a few seconds now until pit lane opens. We had 3 Yamahas in the top 8 positions, with Dominic Egerter leading them in FP1 this morning. Egerter with 5th, Locatelli 7th, and Gardner in 8th place. So not a bad start from the Yamahas, and actually in the early moments of the session when we had the coolest temperatures, they were the first to really get down to pace. So this hasn't been a bad venue for them.
Yeah, and for Locatelli in particular, we know that he can be strong here. Remy Gardner was very good here last year as well. So Domi Aguilar, if he's able to get himself up in those top 10 positions as well, it bodes very well for Yamaha. And they're the 3 Yamaha riders we need to keep an eye on. Obviously, we've also got Jason O'Halloran out there as the replacement for Jonathan Ray. We've got the Moto X bikes out there as well, Bahattin Safalco and Tito Rabat, but they'll be further down the order than those top 3 bikes.
Yes, as will Ryan Vickers on the Moto Corsa Ducati, who was P18 earlier on today. Rest of your leaders, Andrea Iannone was 4th in FP1. The 2nd BMW, Michael van der Mark, was 6th. Danilo Petrucci in 9th, and Alex Lowe's rounding out your top 10. Still work to do as far as Bimota are concerned. Yeah,
I think for Bimota, what we were able to see this morning was pretty impressive actually, to be up inside the top 10. The team were pretty pleased with what they were able to do. Around about 9/10 of a second off the pace, but considering that they've never been here with this bike, I think it was a good start to the weekend for them.
Dominic Hector, as I said, P5 earlier on today, and top Yamaha. Got about his business in 2025 in a steady fashion. Wasn't able to make the top 10 in any of the 3 races in Phillip Island. In fact, finished all 3 of them in 12th place. Had 2 top 10 finishes in the feature length races in Portimao, though. Part of that was the Ducati factor, because Ducati was so strong in round 1. All of their riders seemed to drop back. You know, Iannone, Redding were falling into the clutches of the likes of Egerter. So there were certainly more points available in Portugal.
Yeah, and I think obviously enough the Ducati is the best bike to be on in that midfield. We've seen it time and again where it's got such a strong package, and that's the reason the independent teams want to run it. And for the likes of Domi Aguilar, that can mean that you're that bit further down the order. And Domi's a man under pressure this year. He needs to perform, he needs to get good results early in the season. Otherwise, there's a big question mark about where he'll be next year. You wouldn't be too surprised if he's back in the Super Sport class. Maybe Yamaha look to make a change, put Manzi onto a Superbike and move Domi back onto the R9.
Yeah, there was certainly a stay of execution last season, wasn't there, for Domi, because he's had a couple of seasons of real injuries and hasn't necessarily had the fair crack of the whip. You think about the podium pace he was able to demonstrate in Jerez. There are flashes of brilliance and some great Super Pole performances at times, but you feel he needs a real run to start getting things to click into gear on a regular basis.
Yeah, exactly, and it's one of those situations where the stopwatch doesn't lie and 3 seasons don't lie either. If you've had injuries, there's factors that work against you, but a team can't build on those factors. They need to look at what's best for them, and that's where for Domi it's so important to be able to show that he can perform at a high level on the Superbike. We've seen it at times, podium in a wreck at the end of his rookie season, front row started as debut weekend in Phillip Island, but he's been doing that on a consistent basis, otherwise Yamaha have to look elsewhere.
Axel Bassani, the second of the BIM-motors, set a 1 minute 35.458 earlier on today, so a couple of tenths of a second down on teammate Alex Lowe. That's a fair reflection, I think, of roughly where we've been this season so far. First season for BIM-motor, Bassani has probably closed the gap to Alex Lowe, certainly on that first flying lap there, immediately faster than he went in FP1 earlier on today, 1 minute 34.758 for Bassani. But as far as Axel Bassani is concerned, he's been that much closer to Alex Lowe certainly than he was last season. Lowe's was very familiar with that Kawasaki package. Bassani had been racing for Moto Corsa for some time, but it's a more level playing field between the two of them at the start of this season.
Yeah, and I think it was interesting that Phillip Island and the winter tests we saw how strong Bassani was with that bike, but Portimao was a bit different, and obviously Lowe's qualifies at the back of the field after his crash in Super Pole and then yellow flags, so we never saw his true pace in Portimao, but it looked like in terms of the raw speed there was a little bit of a gap between them, and that's where Bassani needs to make that step, but he's definitely a lot happier with the BIM-motor than he ever was with Kawasaki.
Plenty of riders actually improving on their flying laps, fastest flying laps from this morning's free practice 1 session. First flying lap of FP2, and Andrea Locatelli is your fastest man out there, 1 minute 34.669. He, Axel Bassani, Sam Lowes and Alex Lowes in the top 4 positions this afternoon, all faster than they went earlier on today. So Locatelli up to 4th on the combined times, Bassani up to 5th on the combined, Sam Lowes 7th, and Alex Lowes still in 10th position. Elsewhere, Xavi Vierge with a proper lap in, which is great news for him after his mechanical problems earlier on in FP1. Perhaps in Sofoglu, the only other rider thus far who has improved this afternoon.
Yeah, just looking at Xavi Vierge's time as well, and it's only 3/4 of a second off equal bonus time from FP1, so that at least bodes pretty well for him to immediately get down to some decent work here in this session. Sometimes when you have a small problem with the bike in a free practice session, it can really limit your running. That's what happened to Xavi, and unfortunately for him, he basically had to sit out the entire first session, but out on track now, hopefully able to get some good work in.
And I said it right at the top of the day in the introduction to Free Practice 1, a venue where they haven't tested, unlike in Phillip Island and Portimao, so missing a whole session basically as far as Vierge is concerned will most likely come at some cost.
Yeah, and I think it's a really tough time for the Honda riders because they know that they have to make progress. They know that they have to get results because there's all the rumours about what Honda are going to do here for next season, whether a top rack comes in or what happens there. So suddenly for Xavi and Iker, you have to make sure that you're able to get the results to put yourself onto that bike for next season.
You've brought that rumour up, so we've got to talk about it in a little bit more detail. The possibility of Toprak Razgatlioglu moving to Honda. Honda have had no success, frankly. Try whatever they've done, a couple of experienced riders, then they've gone to relative rookies, at least in World SBK terms. That hasn't really paid dividends. They've had some good weekends, but never with any consistency and you know, only an occasional podium. We've seen for BMW what acquiring Toprak Razgatlioglu can do. Is that where they go, do you know what, we don't know what else to do at this point. Toprak has been such an answer for BMW, and that's what we'll go for. Are they, you know, is that really something that's likely on the cards now?
If you're Honda and you look at the fact that for 6 years, it's the 6th season since they came back as Team HRC, the money that's been spent and the lack of results that they've had, why wouldn't you roll the dice on Toprak? He's already said a lot previously about the fact that he wants to win with other brands. He said it last year in his championship-winning press conference in front of everyone from BMW. He said, "I'd love to win on another bike." And BMW were obviously then thinking, "Oh, let's get a contract sorted as soon as we can." And they'll offer Toprak the world to keep him here, but Honda can offer him whatever they want as well. And I think it's interesting that Honda, when you look at the way that the rumour mill is going for MotoGP and for superbikes, you could easily end up where they put Pedro Acosta on a MotoGP bike, they put Toprak on a superbike, and then you never know what happens in 2027. If Toprak's in a position to win a world championship next year here on a Honda, he might well have it where he wants to be on a MotoGP bike. Honda might be able to do that, and I think it's one of those challenges then to be able to figure out how you fit everyone around. But if you can get Toprak on your bike, you have to explore it. There's a bit of dust there or something through turn one as well as Bautista looks over his shoulder. So we'll wait and see if there's anything that's happened down there at turn one. But for Honda, they have to explore all those options. Otherwise, it's they're not doing their due diligence.
Well, there's your answer, Steve. It's Ryan Vickers who's come to grief, and unfortunately for him, he's had a fair few incidents at the start of his rookie World SBK campaign, and you never want to be touching the barriers. Turn one incident there for Ryan Vickers in the opening 10 minutes of this free practice too.
Yeah, hopefully not a lot of damage done in that one there. It was mostly Ryan bearing the brunt of that, but yeah, he's had some big ones. Obviously, the Portimao crash was as big as the get, and for Ryan, he just needs to be able to get the miles in. It's 7 years since he was here in Assen on a BSB bike, so he's had to relearn the track. I had a quick chat with him just before coming up to the commentary box for the Super Pole session for 300s, and he was saying it's good to be back at Assen. It's a fun circuit. Just got to keep building all the way through the weekend. Yeah,
just wanted to go back to Toprak. You've said it's the right move for Honda, and I don't think there's any doubt about that. It's worth giving it a go. Is it the right move for Toprak Razgatlioglu? Is this a question of him saying, do you know what, I'm going to try and do something nobody else has done in World SBK, keep adding all the different manufacturers, go to the lowest manufacturer in the championship at BMW and win the title, now go to the lowest manufacturer in Honda and try and win the title there as well? Is that his path towards cementing his legacy? Not least, of course, because BMW was also the best financial package, and now we know the might of Honda. That could be the best place to go from a fiscal point of view as well, potentially.
Yeah, I think for Toprak, obviously, like all riders, money matters, but more for Toprak, it's about respect. And Toprak has been disrespected a few times in the past, and he's held it against his employers. He held it against Kawasaki, he held it against Yamaha, and he left to go to BMW. And I think it's one of those situations where for Razgatlioglu, he's always said in the past, MotoGP doesn't interest me that much. It's about winning here in Superbikes, being a Superbike legend. Over the last few years, that's changed. He's gotten more and more confident in himself. He's been able to express himself so much more. He's become a superstar, and he wants to be in MotoGP now. Whether or not that's something that can happen remains to be seen, but to go to Honda means that you're going to a manufacturer that's in tough times here and tougher times in MotoGP. They're more likely to win races here in World Superbikes than they are against Ducati in MotoGP, for instance. But for Razgatlioglu, it changed to Pirelli tires, it changed to an 850 bike, it changed to technical rules, what is needed in MotoGP. It would come at the perfect time for him, because if he's a Honda rider next year, give him 15 testing days a year, give him all the time to get used to a MotoGP bike, hit the ground running as a rookie, do the additional tests as well as the rookies are allowed in MotoGP, and suddenly you're able to really start that season without having to be a complete novice. And I think for Razgatlioglu, that would have to be appealing. And for Honda, it has to be something that is being considered at high levels. And we know from all the talk we hear around the paddock, there's no smoke if there's no fire. And there's a lot of smoke about what's going on there. Toprak, for his part, has said all along, I haven't really talked to anyone too much about it. Keenan has said the same, his manager, and Toprak and Safoglu are two very matter-of-fact people. If you ask them a very straightforward, direct question, they won't look you in the eye and lie to you. They might tell you that they can't say anything, but they won't lie to you. And for Razgatlioglu, when he says he wants to go to MotoGP, but he wants to be on the right opportunity, he means it. And for Keenan Safoglu, his job is to find that opportunity. Honda could be it.
several fast laps coming in now, so let's just remind ourselves of the fact that we're in free practice too. Nicola Bulliger leads the way. First sub 1 minute 34 today, so 1:33.933, with which he goes top on the combined times. Alvaro Bautista straight down to pace. We've seen him sliding his way through the first two sectors. Good to see some real confidence for Bautista. He's second fastest, 1 minute 34.025.
Just so slow through that section, though. Bautista loses a bit of momentum through the corner, but able to carry that speed in the way. I'd have a look at the rear end through turn 1 and into turn 2 here for Alvaro as he opens the gas over the curb. Big slides through there. It looks awful and it's not comfortable. But we've seen Bautista ride like that whenever he's been at his best, and probably that's a little bit more exaggerated than he would want, and certainly more exaggerated than his crew chief, who down there in the pit studio at Nova would want. But for Alvaro, he needs that rear end to move around. He needs it to talk to him, otherwise he can't be fast. And hopefully for him, he's able to learn something from this. But this session is all about the tyres you're using. If you're out there with that development rear tyre, back-to-backing that and getting the information.
Yeah, unfortunately for Alvaro Bautista, as you say, came up across Zaidi on their last lap. Zaidi's 6 seconds a lap off the pace, so if you catch him in the wrong place, and that'll be the case in the rest of the weekend as well, if you catch him in the wrong place in a Super Bowl session, that could be problematic.
Yeah, Zaidi 4 seconds off the pace of Jason O'Halloran on the position in front of him. And I spoke to a few riders at the end of FP1, and they were held up by Zaidi, so he is causing a little bit of an issue for quite a few riders out there. Obviously, we were able to see it quite graphically there for Alvaro Bautista, but it happened at the end of the FP1 session as well. 1.5
seconds down on the qualifying time at the moment in this FP2 session. Zaidi at the bottom of the pile, everyone else well and truly inside. Bulliger leads the way then from Bautista. Sam Lowes has gone faster than he did earlier on today. He's now up to third on the combined times, 1:34.135 for him. Petrucci's just crossed the line there to go P5 and pick him up now. Iannone sitting in P4. So Sam Lowes, Andrea Iannone, Danilo Petrucci. It's an all Ducati top 5 at the moment. Is that just a question of the temperatures going up, or what are we seeing that for?
Well, the temperature's gone up there in Bath in Sofoglu's bike, and there's a lot of smoke, and presumably something's come down there as well. We saw that Danilo Petrucci immediately holding his hand up to warn other riders about it, and you can see the number 99 there with a big issue, and for him, there will be some fluid down there. The belly pan is built to be able to collect as much of it as possible. Bahadin's done the right thing. He's got himself off the track. He's on the curb as early as he can be, and hopefully that means that there's not too much fluid that's actually gone down, and we'll be able to see if that needs to be assessed by the FIM, but hopefully he's just off that line and it's okay.
And fair play to Sofoglu, as you say, immediately swerved off to the left and then puts his hand up very quickly. So good reaction from the rider who of course is a rookie in World SBK this season. We see Toprak Razgatlioglu in debrief with 30 minutes remaining in this free practice too. Nicolo Bulliger's made his way back to the pits at the end of his first stint. Iannone's in, as is Bassani. Razgatlioglu, the only rider in the top 8 at the moment in this session who hasn't improved on his time from FP1.
You can see down there in the BMW pit box, everyone with their tablets out, and it's that you're able to feed the information as quickly as possible between each other, rather than the back in the day way of pen and paper. Now everyone's in the BMW pit box using their tablets to be able to communicate with each other at all times and just speed up the processes, and that's one of the most important things that a team can do, is find an efficient workflow and then give yourself the best chance to be able to make it happen.
Alex Lowes has also improved on his time from earlier on. 9th now on the combined times, 1:34.778 for Alex Lowes. Best part of half an hour remaining in this session. Xavi Vierge makes his way in at the end of the first stint, and what a relief it's going to be for him to have 9 laps on the board in this FP2.
Yeah, and for Xavi, he's been able to put himself up into 13th on the combined times, and he's immediately faster than his teammate Iker Lecuona, considering that he had to sit out FP1. That's pretty impressive there for Xavi, and we've seen this time and again from Vierge that he's got a very good base everywhere we go. He doesn't probably have those ultimate high points that some other riders have, but he's always very solid and dependable, and he's been able to do a decent job here in the first half of FP2.
And it's been a good venue, this in relative terms for Honda in the past.
Yeah, you're looking for where they've been able to have some decent results. They've obviously had some podiums for Lecuona and for Xavi Vierge, but realistically, good weekends for Honda are whenever they're comfortably inside the top 10s and maybe challenging for top 6s. what's good for Honda is when we go to circuits where you've got that Q tyre, they can switch it on so well, and they use that really well in the Super Pole race in particular. We've seen it time and again where Honda have been able to use the Q tyre for the 10-lap race, whereas other manufacturers might have to use an X tyre. And those couple of tenths of a second per lap, that's the difference for them.
Yeah, does that also mean, though, that they are struggling in other conditions? That's the problem, isn't it? Getting the tyre to work optimally right from the start of races.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we've got 26 degrees track temperature here in Assen. It'll probably stay in and around that 25 to 30 range. So not exactly typical weather conditions for the Superbike World Championship whenever we go to a lot of hot places during the height of summer. But you also have places like this, and it's important to have good results in the cooler temperatures here, or Magny-Cours, or a couple of places at the end of the season like Estoril.
Tenth of a second between Nicolo Bulliga and Alvaro Bautista. Bulliga making up his ground. Sectors 2 to 4. Bautista, fastest man in Sector 1. We saw him sliding his way through there. 27.5 minutes remaining in free practice 2. Let's head down to pit lane for the first time this afternoon with Liam Hodgins.
Thank you very much, Alex. Down in Ducati Aruba with Marco Zambenedetti. Both your riders are top of the timesheets for the moment. The Panigale V4 is looking really good out on track. However, we want to talk about the Panigale V4 that could be coming in a couple of months' time next year. There's been a lot of testing on the bike with Michele Pirro. Can you just tell us how the development of the new bike is coming along?
This is the first day here in Assen. For sure is another track like Phillip Island with a lot of fast corner that seems well matching our bike characteristics. Okay, it's just Friday. I think that tomorrow the others will be more close to us, but for the moment we are happy.
And of course, there's big news coming into this weekend about the fuel flow limit, of course, affecting yourself and BMW. Can you just tell us a bit about that, and if you expect there to be much of an impact? Sorry, as we hear Nicolo Bulliga going back out on track. Can you just tell if there's going to be much of an impact for Ducati with the fuel flow limit?
I think that on Friday usually there is a lot of strategies behind, so it's difficult to feel the same. I think we will have a clear view how much is the Ducati and BMW has been affected by this. For sure there is an impact, and we will see in the next race. So for the moment it's a bit early to see, but rules are rules, and we are trying to do our best with this.
Marco, thank you very much, and all the best for the weekend.
Thank you.
Yeah, plenty to come down the track quite literally as far as Ducati are concerned. Obviously, we talked earlier on today about the future and what that might look like rider-wise for Bulliga and Bautista, but on the mechanical side, anytime Ducati is bringing something new, all the other manufacturers are cowering in fear in the corner, aren't they?
Yeah, and you can see here for Sam Lowe's making his way around at the end of the lap. It's a single-sided swing arm on Ducati presently with the V4R, but they've changed that to a double-sided one for next year, and that's just going to make them more and more competitive as well. It's going to give them more options. It's going to give them that a little bit more strength in the rear, and they're going to make steps with the bike because the current version of the V4R was first seen in 2017, so it's 8 years old, and we saw it on track 2018 to go testing, 2019 to go racing. They're following a similar pattern with the new bike, but they've got a full year to get it ready. And speaking to some people in Bologna and people on the inside, and they've all said the same thing to me about the new production bike, is that it's the cleverest road bike they've ever seen. It's got the electronics package is phenomenal, and as a base package they've given it where if you're going out and spending big money, we're going to make you feel like you're the fastest track rider in the world by giving you a lot of aids. But all of that filters down into the level of the base package as well that will go racing. Obviously the electronics and different things will be different whenever they come to World Superbikes, but to have that to hand means that you've got a really strong base level, and that's what the Ducati's going to be. It's going to be a game-changing road bike. Whether it's a game-changing race bike remains to be seen.
They're getting a commission from their marketing and sales department after that pitch. I want to go out and get one. Reality.
You don't have the money for it now.
I wanted to ask you what you touched on it slightly, but what their plan for that development looks like. Obviously, we know they've got a test rider in Pirro. We heard earlier on that they were more interested in Alvaro Bautista committing his future to them before making sure that he's getting out there and testing. Bulliga, we know, has been out and seen the bike. Previously, when you talked about 18-19, they run some national championships with the bike first, didn't they? Just to make sure that they were going to be ready. What does the plan look like to your understanding for this year?
Well, it's interesting actually, because the plan will centre around who they can put on the bike, and they've also got a new MotoGP bike to prep, get ready, and understand what the new technical rules for that what to do. So for this year, to be able to get as much mileage as possible with Piero on the superbike, he's racing in the Italian Championship as well. So Michele is always out on track, and you're able to have a top-line rider that they really trust go out there and develop a package. We saw there the little quote from Aruba from FP1, Ciccone, saying that 90% we want to have Bulega on the bike. In the next couple of months, we'll figure that out. You can read into that at Misano they'll make an announcement. Everything I heard, it was probably going to be Cremona for Bulega to be confirmed. The earlier he signs his contract, the earlier they can have him testing that bike for next year as well. And they'll do that. They'll give him the track time on it. Obviously, the focus will be to make sure he's ready to win a World Superbike Championship this year, but they'll have him out there doing 6, 7, 8 days on the bike for sure. And then the other side of the pit box, if Bautista stays, he's staying on Ducati's terms, not his terms. And that's where it gets interesting for them. If they struggle to get Bautista to agree to what you can only presume would be a much smaller contract than he's on right now, very much bonus focused, then you put him out to test the bike, you get him ready for it as well. But if he doesn't sign that contract, then you have to look to see who else is available. It could be Petrucci, it could be Iannone, it could be anyone else that's out there in a Ducati, or it could be someone from MotoGP as well.
The fact of the matter is, if they want that, whoever that second rider is testing, then they're going to have to make those decisions very early. So it might be that we know the lineup a little bit earlier than we would in another season.
Yeah, and that's what I mean, that Cremona and Misano are the key dates. So the Italian rounds for World SBK, there we'll have Claudio Domenicali on the starting grid, and we'll be able to see him taking centre stage. You'll have Gigi Dall'Igna there as well, their technical maestro, and they'll be able to have all the right people there to get everything lined up, and that's why they want to make those announcements at those Italian rounds. We've seen it at Imola in the past, we've seen it at Misano in the past, and then you've got World Ducati Week as well in the middle of the summer. They're the three big events for Ducati to confirm their superbike plans. The first of them is in 3 weeks' time. Maybe we'll have some clarity on the situation in 3 weeks.
Slight lull in the action. Toprak Razgatlioglu is still out there at the moment and setting strongish lap times. Good first sector on this latest lap from Razgatlioglu. He's 8th fastest at the moment in this session. Wonder what his tyre plan it looks like in this session, and on this particular lap it looks like it's going to be a significant improvement. So Razgatlioglu getting up to pace, or down to pace now in free practice too.
Yeah, we saw Toprak leading the pits just a couple of laps ago, so you'd imagine that for him he's out there with a new X tyre now. We're halfway through this session, and if it's got an all black rear tyre, it'll be the new X tyre. If there's a red flash, he's out there on the tyre that we've seen used over the years as well. So we'll just keep an eye on that. Usually it's on the left-hand side of the tyre where you'd see that red flash.
Well, straight into within 1.5 tenths of a second of Nicolo Bulliga's fastest time.
You can see Phil there, crew chief, just writing down the lap times there for Toprak. So they'll break it down sector by sector. They'll have that in their lap chart as always, and then you're able to see how consistent you are. And it's one of the interesting things when you talk to riders after a session. Obviously we get to debrief with them in their media debrief, but whenever you chat to them after that as well, you get a little insight into how they prepare. And some riders look for their overall lap time. What's my consistency like? They go straight to that page, the pace page, that they're able to see how they do. And then from that, they then look at individual sectors. What am I actually doing? Am I consistent in each of the 4 sectors? Or are my lap times consistent, but I'm up in one sector and one lap down in the next? I'm all here, there and everywhere. Or am I consistent? If you're consistent in each of the sections of the racetrack and every lap, then you'll feel really good about the pace you have. And sometimes you look at it and you say, we might have good pace, but we don't have good speed. And that's where you then need to make that change to find a little bit more lap time. But that's how teams and riders break it down.
Well, Razgatlioglu finding more lap time with this latest effort, quarter of a second up after sector 1. He's lost ground in the middle 2 sectors, where, of course, Nicolo Bulliga, remember, has been fastest of anyone in sectors 2, 3 and 4 in this FP2 this afternoon. See if Toprak can hold on through the final sector as they just avoid the green paint perilously off the final bend. Razgatlioglu crosses the line. It's identical time to Nicolo Bulliga's for joint P1. It is Bulliga who leads the way still in the session. So Razgatlioglu with an exact match of Bulliger's time, just when you thought it couldn't get any closer than we had in the 3 races in Portimao a fortnight ago.
Yeah, and interesting for Toprak, a lot faster in Sector 1, and then Bulliger, like we saw earlier on whenever the lap times were broken down, Sector 2, 3 and 4, that's where Bulliger's setting the pace, and he found a quarter of a second in Toprak in those seconds. So good to be able to see that everything's pretty close, and even when you look at the overall lap times, we've got half a second between first and 8th. Then you've got Alex Lowe's and Remy Gardner within a second. Michael van der Mark, though, needs to find a little bit of something. He's the only rider in the top 18 that hasn't improved his time from this morning. Donny Aguilar is the same down in 19th spot as well. But for van der Mark, he's out on track now. Probably with a new tyre, should be able to see him make a step forward. But I had a quick chat to Sean Moore, his team manager, after FP1. And Sean, I was more interested in Mikey for this weekend because it's the Dutch round. And I was asking him how Mikey was faring, and he said top 6 in FP1 was okay, but he needs to make a big step. There's more to find for Mikey around here, and as it is right now, van der Mark 11th fastest in this session, and certainly there is a little bit more to find for him, but out there on track, new tyre and a personal best in sector 1. You can see that from the timing tower on the left hand side of the screen, the orange sectors being a personal best.
Just wanted to go back to the sector times, because you talked about riders dialing into the areas of the track where they know they're losing most time. Much as Toprak's first sector is strong, and we'd expect that to be the case, heavy braking into turn 1, etc., etc. For Nicolo Bulliger, that first sector is obviously a weakness because Bautista was faster than him. We saw that when in the early minutes of the session. Razgatlioglu's made up a quarter of a second in that sector 1. And it is that opening sector that has a very different characteristic to the rest of the circuit. This is the new layout, as it were, the shortened loop, northern loop, through turns 1 to 5, the slowest corner on the circuit, before the track then opens out, coming off that turn 5 and down the fastest areas of the venue. So at the moment, that's where Bulliger's losing his time.
I think it's interesting as well, though, in that first sector, he's losing time, obviously, to Toprak, also to his teammate Bautista, like you said, but also Danilo Petrucci faster than him as well, and it's one thing for Bautista to have that little bit of an edge. You know that they walk their bikes in very different ways, but for Petrucci, even though the lap time isn't quite there for Petrucci now compared to Bulliger, he's about 0.3 of a second off the pace, but in that first section he's got a couple of tenths of a second.
Is there a possible element of maybe sacrificing that turn 5 a little bit to give yourself a run then through the fast portion of the circuit? I know when the new layout was made here in Assen, one of the big things from the circuit designers was to create various different lines through that turn 5. Is that potentially something, or is it literally just the characteristics of man and machine and gearing and so on?
I think it's just how he's approaching that section, because lap after lap he's in and around that 31.1, 31.0, so he's just got that pace in there, whereas Toprak, again, last time around was a 10th of a second faster in that first sector. Here
is this first sector, and we get an indication of how it tightens up through here.
It's tightening up all the way, but look at the camber as well through here. It's a very unusual section of racetrack compared to anywhere else we go. Even with the onboard camera, you can see how banked it is through these corners and then down in towards turn 5, the dead slow left-hand turn at the hairpin, and then you exit that onto the back straight. Bulliger gets a really good pickup out of there to set up his speed down the back straight. But for Razgatlioglu, it's a different set of circumstances. He's very good in that first sector. Toprak is good in fast corners, but he's amazing in those slow corners, and that's why that first sector probably plays into his strengths a little bit. But as you move on through the lap as well, you can still see the banking of this section of the track. Is the old part of the racetrack, and it's so different to the first part of the track. You look at how open this section is, how fast it is, but again, you've still got those banked sections of the track. You've still got it where the track drops away from you. You've still got it where you can move across the crown of a road. You've got big challenges around here compared to a traditional circuit. And then this corner is the most important corner of the track. It kicks you out onto the long run up towards the Gert Timmer curve. You can see for Toprak there, big slide through there, but it's 4th, 5th gear through there. It's really fast. You've got to be committed. You've got to have confidence in the bike. Toprak obviously has that. But down in towards the final chicane, you're moving from the right-hand side of the track over to the left-hand side of the track, and then you kick into the start of the chicane. It's a physical part of the track where you need to have a lot of confidence in the bike underneath you. Toprak lost about 0.3 of a second with that big slide. But sometimes you need those warnings as well. Razgatlioglu, 15 laps into the session, probably 8 or 9 laps into his stint by my count, and still able to set decent lap times. It was 34.4 last time around, so half a second off his pace, but obviously we saw how much time he lost in the last half of the lap.
Spectacular as ever to ride on board with Toprak Razgatlioglu, and I'm sure just as spectacular in pit lane for us will be Liam Hodgins.
Yeah, down here in pit lane with Jose Escobar of Honda. Now, Jose, we've just seen Javi Vierge come back into the pits there after another short run. Can you just explain to us how the bike is doing, how he's doing in this session? Because we did see a couple of problems for the bike in FP1.
Yeah, right. In the morning, we found out there were some electronic issues that we have tried to solve during the session. We couldn't at that time, and bike now is running well, and now he's trying to get his pace and doing the setup, because we have lost a lot of time this morning during FP1.
Can you just explain to us the run plan for this afternoon, because obviously you did lose a lot of time in the afternoon, or is it just all about long runs, or is it short bursts?
Well, there is no shortcuts on this kind of situation, so actually we have to do what we have planned in the morning, trying to tight a bit the planning. He's getting better on this second session, and he needs to do quickly the setup. So far it's not that bad at all, and we need to just try to move on.
And of course, talking of off-track stuff, there's been a lot of rumours within the last time we'd seen you in Portimao of potentially Toprak joining Honda, maybe for a year or 2 years, potentially MotoGP involved later on. Can you just explain to us or tell us if there's any talks with Toprak and any further advancements?
There is no none of the negotiations, and there is nothing yet. Maybe it could be a chance, and we will need to consider what we're going to do next year, but it's just rumors that the media brought up with no sense, and yeah, so we will look forward to do our plan for 2026, but there is nothing yet, so it's just rumors that media brought up, I don't know, with foundations, but yeah, nothing.
And just one final little one. Of course, this weekend you're building upon a strong weekend from Portimao. Do you think of some good results this weekend?
Well, it's hard to predict and hard to say. We're working. It seems like maybe in here we're going to have a bit more difficulties to reach the level that we got in Portimao. And but let's see. It's too early to see how it's going to be. We're just working on our base setup to find a good compromise on this track.
Thank you very much, Jose, and all the best for the weekend.
Thank you.
So we'll see on the rumours for the future, and yeah, we'll keep an eye on that as we continue. Certainly, I think it makes a lot of sense for both parties. We'll see if it does pan out. I think we've covered enough ground on that one. 11 minutes remaining in free practice 2. Nicolo Bulliger it is who leads the way. 0.2 of a second between him, Razgatlioglu and Bautista. That promises a lot for the weekend to come. But as I said earlier on in the programme, a lot of Ducatis up in those top positions. Bulliger P1, obviously Razgatlioglu's the outlier, but Bautista, Sam Lowes, Iannone, Petrucci, rounding out the top 6, 5 of the top 6. So this afternoon at least, we're in familiar territory from Phillip Island, but we didn't see that in Portimao last time.
Yeah, Reading up there inside the top 10 as well in 9th position, and this is a track that's much more similar to Phillip Island as well. It's a high speed, it's carrying corner speed, it's where the bike's on the side of the tyre for long periods as well. So for the Ducati, we know that's where it's very good, and it looks like here this weekend we've got 5 or 6 Ducatis that are going to be very competitive. You look further down the order and you're looking for the likes of Montella is in 18th position, did very little running in FP1. Ryan Vickers, we saw run off the track earlier on, he's down the order as well. But the vast majority of the Ducatis are going to be fast and competitive this weekend, and it's not a big surprise. We know how good the bike is.
Yes, what I will say though is that in the case of both Petrucci and Sam Lowes, that's a decent step from what they did in FP1. That's quite significant, because they were a little bit further back than perhaps we might have anticipated.
Yeah, and I think that for both those riders, it's important to be able to make those kind of lap times happen. For Iannone as well, because Portimao was such a disappointing weekend for him. Important now here in Assen that he's shown that he's going to be fast again this weekend.
we watched Remy Gardner making his way through the final chicane, where a lap ago he and Garrett Gerloff almost came to blows. Gerloff was none too pleased as he was forced to exit stage left and rejoin. A rare incident in what's otherwise been a quiet day. I'm touching the wooden desk in front of us here in the commentary box now. We have a clean final 9 minutes of FP2, but generally it's been a fairly calm day. That little moment from Garrett Gerloff shows how much it tightens up into the Gitzimer curve.
Just to say as well, for the other Yamaha riders, we saw Remy, obviously, Aguilar, but Tito Rabat's just thrown in a new tyre and he's jumped himself up into 14th fastest. He's found a second with that. So it's always interesting to know and see what tyres everyone's using whenever they make those jumps. Maybe he's gone out there to try a run on a Q tyre. Maybe he's tried something else just to figure something out. But again, to see Rabat up there in that sort of position shows that the Yamaha is working pretty well around here. We can see it with Locatelli in 8th position. There's only half a second, or yeah, about 4/10 of a second between Locatelli and Tito Rabat, but it's the difference between 8th and 14th. So for the likes of Gardner and Aguilar that are only a couple of tenths of a second slower than Locatelli, they find themselves that bit further down the order, and that's where the Super Pole session becomes really interesting to see how they're going to fare.
As we see the stint summary there for Nicolo Bulliger. Strong pace particularly towards the end of that stint, which is a promising sign. The final 2 sectors in particular, Bulliger's making a lot of lap time. That first sector, Razgatlioglu fastest through there, and Andrea Iannone fastest in that sector too.
You can see here for Xavi Vieira a super first sector. He must be out there on a Q simulation or something, because he's found huge amounts of times. It might just be the X tyre right there for Xavi and a fresh one, but he found 4/10 of a second in the first sector, and on course still at the halfway point for a much better lap. So for Xavi Vieira, now that he's out there on track, he's been able to show a lot firm, and it looks like it should be the X.
As we see Vieira making his way through into the second half of the lap. It is the final 10 minutes or so that riders start to think about preparing for tomorrow, and the big race day, of course, as well as the Super Pole session that will be so important. We're seeing into the Barney Ducati pit box because Jari Montella's just posted a new personal best. That's enough to send him up to P11, 1 minute 34.559. So Marco Barnabo looking decidedly happier with that than anything we saw earlier on today. Admittedly, Montella actually did get quite a lot of laps on the board in the end after some concerns in the early minutes of FP1. So his weekend has rather righted itself as things turn out, and he's got every opportunity to make progress. Think about how he hit the ground running quite well in Portimao last time out. The weekend a little bit up and down from there, but I think that's understandable for a rider still making his way in the Superbike class.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, what's the expectations for Jari? It's about trying to build and grow and gain that experience. Petrucci's there to be your team leader that's fast everywhere we go through the season, and Montella's there to spring a few surprises. And for Jari, he's put himself up there on 12th position right now, and again only 3/4 of a second off Budiga's pace. So for him it's a really solid performance, but if you find a 1/4 of a second, you move yourself up to Axel Bassani in 7th position. So it shows just how close it is right now for all these riders.
While we're talking about Montella, quick word about his teammate Petrucci. I don't think we've really discussed him today, but he's been there or thereabouts, top 6 in every race so far this season. Maybe the hope was for a podium or 2 more than he's managed, just the one from the Super Pole race in Phillip Island first time out. 6P6 at the moment in FP2. When the Ducati is strong, Petrucci is strong as well.
Yeah, Petrucci's 3rd in the World Championship. He's qualified on the front row of the grid in Portimao, 2nd row in Phillip Island. So it shows that he's got good speed, like you said, Alex. Top 6 finish in all 6 races so far this season. He's got consistency. That's what he needs to do. He wants to put himself in a position where Ducati want to call him again to be a factory rider like he was in MotoGP. And whether or not that's likely or not remains to be seen, but his job is to make sure that he's on a good package and is able to come away with podiums and win some races this year.
I think ultimately for Barney, as long as they are getting some podiums and they're in with a shout of winning some races, and they're battling for top independent, which they will be against Iannone and perhaps Sam Lowes as well as the season goes on, that's really all that Barney can expect. It's probably more Petrucci that's expecting a little bit more because of his career trajectory and so on. And yet, is the door really open to an official Ducati ride? Is that the route that they will go? Because you have to feel that this season, for example, Iannone at times talked about wanting to be a factory rider. In the end, he's accepted the maximum available factory support and remain with Go 11 with a new sponsor and so on. Petrucci sniffed about, talked about it, but then ultimately said, you know what, I'm quite happy. Barney's a good family team. I enjoy racing here. I'm happy with what I'm doing. I'm still making progress. So is it a question of count your blessings? You're on a competitive bike with a team you enjoy, you know, plenty of Italian spoken and all the rest of it. Perhaps Petrucci's in just the right place at the moment.
I think Petrucci's in the right place for him, and that's where he can have the best results possible really over the course of a full season. Maybe you have some higher performances at different rounds if you're on the Aruba bike, but is he going to perform that much better if he jumps onto the factory seat? Probably not. So for Ducati, they can be very happy that they've got a very popular rider, an Italian rider, on their bike running for the team that they've supported for a long time, the team that actually runs their Italian championship machine as well. So for Petrucci, he's probably where he needs to be to have the best results he can have. For someone like Iannone, he's just shown himself in World SBK over last season and into this season in the first 2 rounds. He's too inconsistent to be that factory rider. He's come in, he's tried to make himself bigger than the Go 11 team as well, and they've let him do that. So for Iannone, is he the factory Ducati rider? I don't think so. I think that they've got Bulega there to win a championship. Does Iannone help them win championships? Probably not.
You either bet on Bautista to get back to where he was, or you bring in someone to be a succession plan for Bulega, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And that can be someone from Supersport like they've done in the past. It could be someone from MotoGP. It could be whoever they picked from the GP stable if someone looks to come across. And for Ducati, they're in a very lucky position that every rider wants to be on their MotoGP bike and every rider wants to be on their superbike, really, and they've got the best of both worlds. And I think that's one of the things that for Ducati, with a new bike coming, it should only get stronger. And obviously the ethos of a production-based championship versus a prototype championship is very different, and here we're seeing more and more where the balancing rules in the super sport class or the 300 class, or what we're seeing with the fuel flow regulations as well in the superbike class, maybe that brings it back a little bit more to having that balance of everyone being able to be competitive, but you also still want that good base package. And if you're on the factory Ducati seat, you know, it's a seat that's always going to be in demand.
Quick word on Axel Bassani, who's obviously put in a fresh tyre, and a soft one at that in the closing minutes, because he's just fired his way up into P2, 1 minute 33.844, so 0.2 of a second now covering your top 4. Sam Lowe's just behind them, as well as Andrea.
Just to say as well, the outright lap record here is a 32.9 with a qualifying tyre from Toprak a couple of years ago on the Yamaha. We're round about a half a second off that for Bulega, Bassani about a second off that. So a new tyre at the end of the session for Bassani. It's probably the same as what we saw for Van der Mark and Javi Vierge, where they've gone with a new X tyre just to try and do a fast lap at the end of the session to give you that information.
Nicolo Bulega's gone for a fast lap in the closing minutes as well, a 1 minute 33.592 for Bulega, so that's a quarter of a second faster than Bassani. It is 0.3 faster than Razgatlioglu and 0.4 faster than his teammate Bautista. Half a second then the gap to Andrea Locatelli, who is your top Yamaha in P5. Final laps coming in, less than a minute to go in this free practice 2. Distorts maybe these final laps how close it has been, because otherwise throughout the day and until that effort from Bulega, there was really only 0.2 of a second covering him, Razgatlioglu and Bautista.
Yeah, it's like anything else, it's only whenever we get to the Super Bowl session where everyone's putting it all on the line that we'll really get the true indication of where everyone's speed is. What you can learn from these sessions though is where the pace is, and Bulega's got pace, Toprak's got consistency as well. Bautista should be somewhere in the mix. Locatelli's got a good bike underneath him with that fresh tyre, and that's why he's up inside the top 5 and improving again on this lap. So Locke on that Yamaha, if he's able to get into tomorrow morning Super Bowl session, put it on the second row of the grid, he's got another chance of a very strong weekend to challenge for podiums again.
Toprak is going to get 1 lap in here at the end of free practice 2 in a last stint. The checkered flag has fallen, but Toprak had already made it across the line, so 1 flying lap for him before our usual practice starts at the end of this session. Andrea Locatelli, another new personal best from him, 1 minute 34.014, ahead of Alvaro Bautista now into P4. Razgatlioglu 0.2 of a second down after sector 1, so perhaps won't be able to improve with this final effort. We'll see what he can do elsewhere in the lap, but we know that it has been that first sector where he's made a fair amount of ground. So looks as though we've settled in our positions here with Buliga, Bassani and Razgatlioglu, your fastest three in FP2. Locatelli just behind with Alvaro Bautista, and the top five all covered by half a second. Sam Lothar's up there after Sector 2, but he's lost ground now in Sector 3. The lap's gone away from him. Andrea Iannone sees the checkered flag, 134.8 on his final lap, so he fails to improve and remains P7. Petrucci, Van der Mark and Redding rounding out your top 10. So we'll just continue watching Toprak Razgatlioglu through to the end of the lap, but it does look as though we're set up for Buliga, Razgatlioglu and potentially Bautista to go with them as well. Good start to the weekend.
Yeah, great start to the weekend. Super Pole is going to be very interesting tomorrow. We saw in Portimao just how critical it is for your full fortunes over the weekend, and I think that for all the riders, that 11 o'clock tomorrow, it's that moment where the truth really is shown, and we'll have to see who's able to get that speed to go with Buliga over a single lap. If Bassani's able to back up this kind of pace with a Q tyre, obviously a big gap between him and Alex Lowe's 10 and 14th, around about 3/4 of a second. So it's interesting that the Motas seem to be on very different programs today.
So, checkered flag falls and the session is complete. Gary Montella, I understand, ran off the circuit on his final lap, which will be why we're seeing him, and here is exactly what happened.
Yeah, just at the end of the lap there, very easy to have that where you just duck into the left-hander at 15 and just realise that you're a little bit too hot or you're a bit offline. You have to stand it up. And for Montella, he's done well to be able to get away with that one without having a crash, because we've seen plenty of bikes try and tip into that corner and have big crashes.
Yeah, thankfully for Gary Montella, he can make his way back to the pits unscathed. So as ever, at the end of free practice 2, let's go through our 3-2-1. Razgatlioglu third fastest, and for Toprak, a 1 minute 33.911. Your top three all into the 1 minute 33s. Razgatlioglu is your lap record holder here in Assen, dating back to 2022. Late single lap effort from Axel Bassani, P2 for him, a 1 minute 33.844 as they rumble past our commentary box and back into pit lane. Bassani 1/4 of a second down on the outright fastest man, Nicolo Buliga, 133.592 from Buliga. And ultimately, it was only one sector in which Buliga was the fastest of anyone, and that was Sector 3.
Yeah, and for Buliga, we were able to see that he's fast in each section and able to get a lot out of that package. And here in Assen, it's such a short lap. It's just over 4 kilometres, but more than anything, it's a minute and a half. So if you're consistent across all 3 sectors, then you give yourself that chance to be able to come away with fast lap times. It's interesting that Buliga could do that. I was quite interested in Locatelli at the end of the session as well. Locke put in a really good lap right at the end. He had 4 personal best sectors. He was able to show that he could bring it all together, and that's the important thing for the riders. Can you put all of your laps together?
Nico Buliga, the fastest man then. We catch up with him. And every single rider was able to improve on their times from FP1. So your combined times are the same as these results. In FP2, Nicolo Buliga fastest ahead of Axel Bassani and Toprak Razgatlioglu. 3 different manufacturers in your top 3, and in fact 4 different manufacturers in your top 4, because next best is Andrea Locatelli, your lead Yamaha. Ducati's led for much of the session though. They finished with Bautista P5, Sam Lowe's, Andrea Iannone, Danilo Petrucci in P8. Rounding out your top 10, Michael van der Mark and Scott Redding, with Gary Montella surviving that last lap off-track excursion just behind in P11.
Thanks to the team then over there on the world feed for such a exciting session as we are gearing up there. Nicolo Buliga top as well from Axel Bassani in second. Toprak being dropped down into 3rd place as well. That one was quite unexpected. Well, you can join us again tomorrow for all of the action. Free practice 3, then that's going to be followed by Super Pole and the sprint race, which is the race 1 of the day coming up tomorrow as well. It's going to be fantastic. We've also got for you here this afternoon, coming up is the WCR Super Pole, the women's circuit racing, as they get back underway for their 2nd year, and we are first covering it here on JB Motorsports. We'll be back later for all the action. Take care. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.